What happens when a billionaire's son is told he'll never belong, and his father decides the whole world needs to hear about it? You think money makes you untouchable. That was the first thing JJ heard when he walked into the lunchroom on his third day at Belmont Academy. It wasn't loud, not enough for the teachers to notice, but just enough for him to hear, just enough for it to sting. Jonathan JJ Ellington had always been proud of his last name. His father, JJ Ellington, was one of the most successful tech CEOs in the country, a name that carried weight in boardrooms and business magazines. Their family lived in a mansion with a private tennis court, a swimming pool bigger than most hotels, and a security gate that kept the world at a safe distance. JJ had never thought much about privilege. It was just the way life had always been. But here at Belmont Academy, none of that seemed to matter. The school was one of the most prestigious in Santa Barbara, California, a place where old money ruled and new money had to prove itself. The kind of school where last names were legacies passed down like heirlooms, and where students carried themselves with the quiet confidence of knowing they belonged. JJ thought he'd fit in. After all, his dad was one of the wealthiest men in the state. He had all the same things his classmates did: the designer sneakers, the latest iPhone, the expensive watch. But something was different. The whisperers started almost immediately. Does he even belong here? I mean, sure, his dad's rich, but his hair looks weird. I bet he got in because of some diversity quota. JJ tried to ignore it. He kept his head down, focused on his classes, and stayed polite. But the comments kept coming, sliding between conversations like knives hidden in soft voices. It wasn't just the students. The parents had their own way of making him feel like an outsider. They didn't say it outright, but JJ noticed how they never seemed to acknowledge his dad at school events. How they smiled tightly when they spoke to his mother but never quite invited her into their circles. How their eyes lingered just a second too long when he walked past. JJ told himself he was imagining things, that he just had to prove himself. But then the prank started. The first time, he found his locker filled with crumpled paper and notes that read, "Go back where you came from." The second time, someone knocked his lunch tray out of his hands, laughing when his food spilled across the floor. The third time, he opened his backpack and found a single piece of paper inside. 5 words written in thick black ink: "You'll never belong here." JJ clenched his jaw and stuffed the paper deep into his pocket. He wouldn't let them see him break. But that night, as he sat at the dinner table pushing his food around his plate, his father noticed something was wrong. Derek asked, setting down his fork. JJ forced a smile. "Just tired." Derek studied him for a long moment but didn't push. "Not yet." But the truth was, JJ wasn't just tired. He was exhausted. He thought Belmont Academy was supposed to be the place where he'd find friends, where he'd fit in, where people wouldn't see him as just a black kid in a school full of rich white kids. But now he wasn't so sure. And the worst part, he had no idea how much worse it was going to get. JJ didn't realize that no matter how hard he tried to blend in, some people were determined to push him out. JJ started keeping his head down. He figured if he stayed quiet, stayed out of the way, maybe they'd get bored and move on. That's what his mom always told him. Kill them with kindness, baby. Don't give them a reason to hate you. But it didn't matter how nice he was. In history class, whenever the topic of slavery or civil rights came up, all eyes shifted toward him. Some of the kids snickered, like they were waiting for him to say something. Others just stared. One time, the teacher asked a question about segregation, and before JJ could even process it, a kid named Tyler Whitman, one of the most popular boys in school, muttered under his breath, "JJ should answer that. Bet his grandpa was in the fields." The class erupted in laughter. JJ froze, gripping the edges of his desk so tightly his knuckles turned white. He wanted to say something, anything, that his grandfather was actually a lawyer, that his dad built a billion-dollar company from nothing, that his family had worked twice as hard to get half as much respect. The teacher barely reacted. A sharp look, a half-hearted, "Let's stay respectful." And then she moved on. But Tyler smirked at JJ like he'd won something. JJ swallowed hard and stared at his textbook. Just get through the day. But the school hallways weren't any better. One morning he walked past a group of kids standing by the lockers. He heard Jackson Reynolds, another one of Tyler's friends, say loud enough for him to hear, "Yeah, but JJ isn't like, a real Ellington. He's just lucky his dad got a handout." JJ stopped walking. A handout? His father had spent years sleeping in his car, taking showers at the gym, building his company from the ground up. What handout? JJ spun around. "What did you just say?" Jackson raised an eyebrow, pretending to be confused. "I'm just saying, man, your dad's a big deal now. But I heard people saying he wouldn't have made it if companies weren't desperate to look diverse. Just a fact." JJ's fists clenched. He wanted to hit him. He wanted to wipe that smug look off his face. But he didn't, because he knew exactly how that would go. One punch, one outburst, and he'd be the angry black kid. The one who couldn't handle being in a school like this. So instead, he just turned away. Laughed it off like it didn't matter. But that night, as he sat alone in his room, staring at his reflection in the mirror, he couldn't stop hearing Jackson's voice in his head. Not a real Ellington. Like no matter what his father built, no matter how successful they were, it still wasn't enough. But JJ didn't realize how far they were willing to go to remind him of that. Because the next morning, they made sure he'd never forget. But this time, it wasn't just words. This time, they wanted to break him. "You're only here because your dad bought your way in." Or wait, he snapped his fingers. Maybe the school just needed a token. A couple of kids nearby laughed. Not all of them. Some looked uncomfortable. But nobody said anything. Nobody ever said anything. JJ clenched his jaw. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. He could feel it, that deep, ugly anger bubbling up, the one his father always warned him about. "You don't get to mess up like they do, JJ. One wrong move and they'll never forget it." So he shoved the notes into his backpack, slammed his locker shut, and walked away. Tyler called after him, voice dripping with fake concern. "Hey, come on, don't be mad, we just messing around." JJ didn't stop, didn't turn around, didn't let them see how much it hurt. That night, JJ sat on the edge of his bed staring at his phone. His mom knocked on the door. "Dinner's ready, sweetheart." "I'm not hungry," he mumbled. A pause. Then her voice softened. "You sure?" He forced himself to sound normal. "Yeah, just tired." Another pause, then footsteps walking away. JJ exhaled. He wanted to tell them. He wanted to tell his dad everything. But Derek Ellington wasn't just any dad. He was a man who built an empire from nothing. A man who told JJ to never let people see him weak. A man who didn't have time for excuses. JJ couldn't be the son who complained about words. But the words wouldn't leave him alone, especially not the one on that note. He clenched his phone so hard his knuckles ached. Then finally, he did the one thing he swore he wouldn't do. He opened his texts and typed 3 words to his best friend Andre. "I hate it here." But what JJ didn't know was that someone else had already seen the note. And this time, there was no ignoring it. Derek Ellington had spent years fighting battles in boardrooms, shutting down doubters, proving to the world that he belonged at the top. But nothing prepared him for this. Started with a phone call. JJ's homeroom teacher, Ms. Caldwell, had called the house. Voice tight, carefully measured. Mr. Ellington, I think we need to talk about what's been happening to JJ at school. Derek frowned, setting down the thick contract he'd been reviewing. He glanced at his wife Renee, who stood nearby already looking concerned. What do you mean? What happened? A pause. Then Miss Caldwell said 4 words that sent a cold, sharp weight to his chest. There was a note. JJ sat at the dinner table, barely touching his food. He kept his head down, pushing rice around his plate with his fork. His father watched him carefully. Finally, Derek spoke. I got a call from your teacher today. JJ's stomach twisted. His grip tightened around his fork. Renee leaned forward, eyes soft with concern. Baby, why didn't you tell us? JJ shrugged. It's nothing. Derek's voice sharpened. A slur on your locker isn't nothing. Silence. JJ kept his gaze locked on his plate. His father never raised his voice. Never had to. He had the kind of presence that made people listen. That made even the most powerful executives sit up straight. But right now, it wasn't just authority in his voice. It was something else. Anger. Renee reached for JJ's hand. Honey, you know you can talk to us. JJ swallowed hard. He wanted to. But what was the point? His dad was Derek Ellington. A man who had never let racism stop him. A man who had built his own company because no one would give him a chance. A man who had told JJ a million times, you work harder. You prove them wrong. That's how you win. JJ forced a small smile. I'm fine. Really. Derek exhaled sharply. JJ, don't do that. Don't act like this doesn't bother you. JJ flinched. His dad almost never used that tone with him. Renee gave Derek a look. But he wasn't backing down. You think ignoring it is going to make it stop? Derek pressed. JJ snapped. What do you want me to do, Dad? Fight them? Get myself expelled? That's what they want. Derek's jaw tightened. I want you to stand up for yourself. JJ pushed back his chair. You think I don't? You think I don't try? It doesn't matter. I could be the smartest kid in that school. The richest. The best at everything. And it still wouldn't be enough. They don't care, Dad. I'll never be enough for them. The words hung in the air. Renee's eyes filled with tears. Derek sat back in his chair, expression unreadable. JJ's breathing was ragged. He hated how raw his voice sounded, how close he was to breaking. I gotta go, he mumbled, storming upstairs before they could see the tears welling in his eyes. Derek sat in his office, staring at the dim glow of his laptop screen. The contracts in front of him blurred together. He couldn't focus. His son was hurting, and he had no idea how to fix it. Renee walked in, arms crossed. You were too hard on him. Derek sighed, rubbing his temples. I don't want him to let them win. She sat down across from him. He's 12, Derek. He shouldn't have to fight like you did. That hit harder than he expected. Derek had spent his whole life fighting, clawing his way up, proving people wrong. He'd always thought that was the answer. But now, looking at his son, his smart, kind, hurting son, he realized something. Maybe this wasn't a battle JJ needed to fight alone. Maybe this was a battle Derek needed to fight for him. He closed his laptop, and the next morning he walked into Belmont Academy, ready for war. But Derek was about to learn that money and power don't always change people's minds. And the school wasn't going to make this easy. Derek Ellington walked through the front doors of Belmont Academy like he was walking into a boardroom. He wasn't here to make a scene. He was here to get answers. The receptionist, a woman in her late 50s with perfectly styled hair and pearl earrings, looked up and forced a tight smile. Mr. Ellington, what a surprise. Derek gave a curt nod. I need to speak with the principal. Now, she hesitated. Do you have an appointment? Derek folded his arms. No, but I suggest you make one. The receptionist's smile faltered. She picked up the phone. One moment. Minutes later, Derek was sitting across from Principal Simon Westbrook. A man who had probably been running this school longer than Derek had been building his company. He had the look of someone who prided himself on maintaining tradition. Derek cut straight to the point. My son has been harassed since the day he walked into this school. It started with whispers, then notes, then slurs on his locker. And you let it happen. Westbrook cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. Mr. Ellington, I assure you we take bullying very seriously. Do you? Derek interrupted, voice like steel. Because my son has been dealing with this for weeks, and not once has a teacher stepped in. Not once has a single student been held accountable. Westbrook's expression barely changed. We encourage our students to come forward when they experience difficulties. He did come forward, Derek snapped. And nothing changed. A long silence. Westbrook sighed, lacing his fingers together. Mr. Ellington, I understand your frustration, but you have to consider the environment here. Belmont Academy is an elite institution, and we expect our students to handle challenges with maturity. These are young boys. Sometimes they say things without understanding the weight of their words. Derek leaned forward, his voice dangerously calm. The word written on my son's locker had plenty of weight, and those young boys knew exactly what they were doing. Westbrook gave a tight, polite smile, the kind Derek had seen in 1,000 corporate meetings. The kind that meant we hear you, but we don't actually care. Perhaps this school just isn't the right fit for JJ. Westbrook said smoothly, if he's struggling to adjust, I'm sure there are other institutions that might better suit. Derek's laugh was sharp. So now the problem is him? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Silence. Then Derek stood up. He straightened his suit jacket, looked Westbrook dead in the eye, and said, You think I'm just going to take my son and walk away? You don't know who you're dealing with. He turned and left without another word. JJ sat alone in the library, trying to pretend he wasn't dreading lunchtime. Ever since the note incident, the bullying hadn't slowed down. It had just gotten quieter. Instead of shoving him or calling him names outright, Tyler and his friends had started playing a different game. Now every time JJ walked into a room, they just stopped talking. They'd exchange smirks, lean in like they were sharing some secret joke, and then laugh. They didn't have to say anything anymore. They had already planted the seed. JJ kept his head down, flipping pages in a textbook he wasn't reading, when suddenly his phone buzzed. A message from his dad. Meet me outside after school. JJ's stomach twisted. He knew that tone. His dad was about to do something big. When JJ walked out of Belmont Academy, he immediately saw his father's black Mercedes Maybach parked by the curb. That wasn't unusual. But the news cameras waiting nearby, that was new. JJ's eyes widened. Dad, what are you doing? Derek stood tall, looking like he belonged at a press conference, not a school pickup line. His voice was calm, measured, but there was fire behind it. I told you, he said, looking his son in the eye. I don't let people silence me. Before JJ could say another word, Derek stepped forward, right in front of the cameras. A reporter from a local news station adjusted her mic, eyes sharp with interest. Mr. Ellington, can you tell us why you're here today? Derek didn't hesitate. I'm here because my son has been the target of repeated racial harassment at this school. I'm here because instead of protecting him, The administration ignored it. And I'm here because silence is complicity. JJ felt his heartbeat hammering in his chest. This was huge. Tyler, Jackson, and a few other students stood near the entrance watching. They weren't smirking now. One of the cameras turned toward them. Jackson shifted uncomfortably. Tyler looked away. The principal walked out of the building, his face pale. "Mr. Ellington, I don't believe this is necessary." "Oh, it's very necessary," Derek interrupted. "If my son isn't safe here, then no black child is." Silence. The weight of those words hung in the air. The principal looked at the cameras, suddenly aware of just how bad this looked. Derek turned back to the reporters. "I want parents to know what's happening here. I want students who have experienced this to come forward. And I want accountability." JJ swallowed hard, watching his father stand there fearless. For the first time in weeks, the weight in his chest felt a little lighter. Maybe things were about to change. Maybe he wasn't alone after all. But change doesn't come easy. And some people weren't ready to let go of their power without a fight. The next morning, Belmont Academy was in chaos. The story had spread overnight. News stations picked it up. Social media was flooded with reactions. Parents were furious, some demanding change, others defending the school. The Board of Trustees held an emergency meeting. They released a statement about their commitment to diversity and inclusion. But the damage was already done. For the first time, the school's reputation was on the line. And people like Principal Westbrook cared about that more than anything. A week later, Derek and JJ were called into a meeting with the school administration. Westbrook sat stiffly behind his desk. Next to him was Tyler Whitman's father, a man with graying hair and a tailored suit who looked like he was doing this out of obligation, not regret. Tyler sat beside him, arms crossed. Westbrook cleared his throat. "Mr. Ellington, we've spoken to the students involved and we'd like to address the situation properly." Derek raised an eyebrow. "Properly? Now the cameras are watching." Westbrook ignored that. He turned to Tyler's father. "Mr. Whitman, would you like to say something?" Mr. Whitman sighed, looking at his son. "Tyler?" Tyler's jaw tightened. He exhaled sharply, then muttered, "Sorry." JJ stared at him. That was it. No acknowledgement. No ownership. Just a word his parents forced him to say. Derek leaned forward, voice smooth but sharp. "Sorry for what?" Tyler's face twitched. His father nudged him. Tyler swallowed. For the notes and the jokes. JJ felt nothing. No satisfaction. No relief. Because this wasn't real. Westbrook forced a thin smile. "We believe this is a learning moment for everyone involved." Derek studied them for a long moment. Then he stood up. "Come on, JJ." JJ blinked. "We leaving?" Derek looked at him. "We didn't come here for an empty apology. We came to make sure they know we're not afraid of them." Tyler flinched at that. Mr. Whitman shifted uncomfortably. Derek met Westbrook's gaze. "And you sat in that chair and let it happen. You failed at your job. If you think this is over, you're mistaken." Westbrook's face paled. Derek turned to JJ. "Let's go." And just like that, they walked out. That night, JJ sat with his dad in his office. Derek leaned back in his chair, exhaling. "We have two choices, son. You can stay and fight, or we find a new school where you don't have to prove yourself every day." JJ hesitated. A part of him wanted to leave, to never see those halls again, to go somewhere he didn't have to constantly be reminded he was different. But another part of him thought about the kids who didn't have a choice, who couldn't just leave when things got tough. He thought about the next black kid who'd walk through those doors and wonder if he belonged. JJ looked at his father. If I leave, they win. A slow, proud smile spread across Derek's face. They don't get to decide who I am, JJ said quietly. Derek nodded. No, they don't. JJ took a deep breath. Then I'm staying. The bullying didn't magically stop after that. Some kids still whispered. Some parents still stared. But something had changed. People were watching now. Teachers paid attention. Kids who had stayed silent before started speaking up. Some even apologized, not because they were forced to, but because they realized they'd been wrong. And Tyler, he never said another word to JJ again. Because deep down, he knew he lost. JJ didn't just survive Belmont Academy. He owned it. This isn't just a story. It's reality for so many kids. Discrimination doesn't care about money, status, or success. It finds ways to creep into places where it shouldn't exist. And the only way to fight it is to stop staying silent. So if you see something, say something. Because silence isn't just complicity. It's permission. JJ didn't just find his voice. He lit a fire that couldn't be ignored. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to stay silent. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more real stories that matter.